Hey, shiny people. Jim Cromell here, coming at you with another edition of Shot of Espresso. In today's shot, we're going to be focusing in on two strategies that I'm using right now to be profitable and to begin to scale right here on Facebook ads in Q1 of 2022. Now, if you've had some issues getting things to stick, go profitable on Facebook ads in 22, it's okay. You're not alone. It's very, very difficult to be profitable at any kind of scale in January. Low scale, it's obvious, it's much easier to do, but if you try to ramp up to tens of thousands of dollars a day, typically it's a lot harder to do in any January compared to like a November or December. Simple macroeconomics. People spend a lot of money in Q4 for holiday season buying. They really restrict what they spend for extra stuff in January. And that's just the way it is. It's the way it always is going to be because you can't change human nature. People have been programmed, buy everybody's gifts in Q4 for the holidays. January, holy cow, I can't believe I spent so much money in the holiday season. I'm not going to do that again. So unless you're in fitness or some kind of like New Year's resolution niche, typically you will see a slowdown, a very big slowdown in January. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. I've got a test account up right now. And I'm going to show you how I set up both methodologies that are working well. Now, the way that I created these strategies are around how do I avoid Facebook's algorithm, or I guess I should say avoid being dependent on Facebook's algorithm. And that's one strategy. And then the other strategy is how do I give or forcibly give exactly what Facebook wants? So it's sort of, how do I go all the way on this side to give Facebook exactly what it wants? So hopefully it gives me favor in the ad auction. And then on this side, how do I completely ignore the algorithm, just force Facebook to give me the best quality traffic possible and go from there? So these strategies are not testing strategies. If you are just testing a new phrase or a new audience, you want to identify what audience is going to work best first before going into these two strategies in and of themselves. Okay, this is sort of that seedling stage. If you followed along with the farming method that I did, and again, I come up with funny or like simple little quips on how to assign names to strategies and things like that. It doesn't have to be called the farming method. I mean, realistically, it's just audience testing on small budgets. That's what seed stage is. So if you talk just the marketing vernacular that we use in the space, seed stage of the farming method is just low budget audience testing. Okay. Seed lean stage is taking the audiences you identified in the seed stage and seeing if they'll hold, the performance will hold as you scale them up. So this doesn't necessarily replace it completely. Because the old seed lean stage was to do between $50 and $100 as a budget and run it against the audience. But it's additional ways to test. I'm finding that these two ways are working better than the traditional seed lean stage. What I was finding at the very end of Q4 and so far in Q1 this year is I could identify audiences and get performance and profitable performance out of a specific audience at low budget. Whenever I tried to scale it up, that's where we kept running into that brick wall of it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And maybe you guys have experienced that as well. So I was like, sat back for a minute and I was like, how have I done this in the past? And that's the first strategy. And then what's something that's completely different than what I've tried before? And that's the two strategies that I came up with. So first comes first. This is an adaptation of a strategy that I used years and years ago, 4 years, and was very profitable for me back in the day. So I was like, let's give it a shot. So what is that strategy? So these are all just old campaigns that we ran last year. You can see back in July of 21. So this is kind of a dormant account. And I wanted to show you this so that way I could just walk you through the steps. So what I would do is I would have my audience testing campaign, and I would pick out the very best audience, whether it had the most sales. That's the most preferable way, right? Like if your audience is got a bunch of sales on it, then that's one that you want to focus on. If you don't have a ton of sales, but you have one or two in a couple audiences. Pick whichever one you deem the best. You should test long enough to where some audiences are got some sales on them. You wouldn't want to do this any kind of scaling until you identify audiences and a message card or a product. It doesn't have to be a message card, right? It could be a dog tag. It could be a buyer upload. It could be a watch. It could be metal art, whatever it is. Once you have identified the audiences that are reacting well to whatever product you're selling, now let's see how can we really dive in and get the most out of that audience as possible. Facebook likes bigger audiences now. So the bigger audience you can give it, the better it's going to be, okay? Or the better chances you have of better results. So what you would do is you would take the very best performing audience that you have, preferably would have at least 20 million people in the audience, so bigger, broader things. And then you would create a campaign. Go ahead and set this up, and it would go, the way I named it is I would come up with some form of acronym that highlights the product itself. So let's see. This would be like, never forget I love you, right? Would be part of the phrase or whatever. You can come up with whatever naming convention you want. But this is how I would do it. And then, so whatever is the identifier of the product, however you identify that. And really it would just be, in my stores, I typically will do like niche dash a part of the phrase. So it'd be like daughter, my baby girl, daughter or wife, you're the best thing ever, right? So something along those lines, whatever's in the phrase I'd pick out. And again, that's just what I do. You do whatever works best for you. Then I would pick the audience. So let's say we actually haven't, here's an extra tip. So if you pay attention to these, you'll get really good tips, right? So happiness as an interest target is actually working really well for us. It just randomly you're testing different things. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You can try happiness and then $5. I'm going to do happiness. And this is going to be existing post ad. And continue. And you'll actually see Advantage Plus conversions campaign, quickly create a campaign. This has popped up a couple of times when in the recent past when I last did this. And this is, I had the idea of this to set up this test in a different ad account. But this gave me confirmation to saying like, Facebook's not playing around anymore. Facebook is literally saying, this is what we recommend. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it. And we'll get to this is actually around the second strategy. But stay tuned on this one. For this purpose, we're just going to do manual conversions and continue. In a lot of cases, manual control is better than giving Facebook full reign of everything, in my personal opinion. But letting you know that we're going to follow that in the second strategy. So this is an ABO strategy, okay? So ad set budget optimized strategy. So therefore, we basically leave the campaign as a file folder, okay? If I were to turn on campaign budget optimization, now I'm giving the campaign level an additional role. Instead of just being the folder that organizes everything, it would control the budget. I don't want it to control the budget in this setup. I will in the next one. So next, we're going to go next. And we want to select the pixel. So we can just pick a pixel. And then you always want to do purchase. And then daily budget. Well, this is new. Used to be much smaller. Now it's, so daily budget, $5. Okay. I always started, I'm in Eastern Standard Time. You can see Eastern Time here. I always start my ads at 6:30 a.m. the next day. Some people like 6, some people like midnight. It's up to you. I prefer 6:30 a.m. on the next day. The audience that I'm going to pick is 25 and up. If I have a message card that can be used, like it doesn't say love dad or love mom or love grandma or whatever, it doesn't actually specify, then I could leave the gender as a whole. If I'm doing like a daughter gift from dad, or I'm doing a soulmate gift from husband, then I would say, okay, I would target whomever's purchasing. So just random happenstance, we're going to do men, okay, for this one. and then we're going to type in happiness. It is. And you can see we've got that sweet spot above 20 million to 30 million. If it gets above 60 million, you may want to dial it down a little bit or add, define further. So you add a layer into it. But most audiences would be just fine. So I'm choosing happiness. I'll leave automatic bid or automatic, actually manual placements. And then I'm going to remove audience network. I found that in our recent test, at least when I was doing this test, removing the audience network was helpful. So I removed the audience network. And again, you may want to split test it. Still running.